Ed Dentzel, author, podcaster, and blogger, and this is what's in my bag. Let me start out with my putters. Generally, you're going to see that mostly I use Innova plastic, but when it comes to my putters, I use 2 Psychos and 1 Aviar. Of course, the Psychos are just Innova makes these putters, as I understand, for Discmania. But the reason I like them is they seem to come in a harder plastic than anything that you can get in an Aviar from actually Innova, except for maybe the Paul Macbeth putter, which has just come out within the last few months. I prefer a solid plastic. You know, some guys and women get into this really bendable, really flexible putters. They think that it grabs the chains a little better. I like the hard plastic because it feels better in my hand, feels more comfortable in my hand. The Psychos from the factory tend to be a little overstable, and even within these 2 discs, they're the same exact disc, just different colors. This one actually started out a little bit more overstable than this one did. This is my putter for like 25 feet and in. Whereas anything outside of that, and especially if I'm putting into the wind, I use this one because going into the wind, it tends to flatten out and go right at the basket, especially if you're putting downhill too. Whereas this one, you put into the wind from any sort of distance, 25, 30 feet, 35 feet, tends to flatten out, then wants to go the other direction, an Anheuser. So those are my 2 putters, 25 feet and in, about 35, 40 feet and in. And then my other putter, I actually use this off the tee for shots about 225 and in, depending on the wind, of course. But if it's just an average wind, not blowing any particular, if it's calm conditions, this is what you're going to find me throwing from about 200 feet and in, and even off the tee. Love it. You have to watch into the wind, of course, a little bit, because, of course, an Aviar putter into the wind is going to want to Anheuser and flip over big time. The other thing, and I have several of these that I use to practice with. I must have at least 12 Aviars, but this one is unique compared to the rest of them. I don't know if it was a misprint or it was manufactured differently, but it's a little gummier than the rest of them. And so when it comes to throwing actually just from 200 feet, I don't care if the disc is a little gummy, whereas I do care if I'm actually putting with one, like the hard plastic. With this, it just is a little bit different. It's not actually DX. It's almost more like Pro plastic than DX plastic. But it says it's DX, so I don't know. But anything 200 feet and in, this is what I'm throwing. Once again, depending on a lot of conditions, but 90% of the time, this is what I'm throwing. Next, I have a couple Cobras. And by the way, you're going to find that I have a very old school basket. Next, I have a couple Cobras. This Cobra right here, it's 175 Beat DX Cobra, flippiest disc in my bag, easily. I could have a 20-mile-per-hour wind at my back, and I could get down and give it a lot of hyzer, and it's still going to flip over. And the reason that's important for me is because I don't flick. The only thing I throw is left-handed backhand. By the way, I'm left-handed. And so I need discs that are going to go that opposite direction to the left, from right to left, because I don't flick. I've tried it, don't do it very well. But so I need discs that are flippy to go the opposite direction. So you'll see me a lot of times, if I need to go in tight quarters especially, from right to left, you're going to see me with this Cobra, getting down on it, not wanting to give it a lot of spin because it'll actually turn into a roller, but just trying to get it out, and automatically it's going to start going to the left. Probably I can get this out to about 250 feet with a pretty good rip on it, and flipping it over and going the opposite direction. This Cobra is 180 gram one. It's not even close to his beat. Of course, Cobras, if you throw them into the 10 mile per hour, 15 mile per hour wind, they're going to flip over anyway. But this one tends to be more overstable comparatively to this one. Actually, it's probably just wants to go straight. And I can throw a Cobra about 280, 290, something like that, without thinking about it too much. Once again, just have to be careful of the wind when you get to discs like this, because the wind will tend to push these things around because they're just dying to be they're just dying to be understable. Next, I carry two rocks. Probably my most favorite disc in my bag, well, second favorite probably, is my KC Rock Pro. Funny story about this is I lost this up in Holiday, Florida, playing on a course known as Forest Hills, which is on a 9-hole golf course. It's a disc golf course, a ball golf course. Lost it in the water up there. About 8 months later, somebody found this disc about 25 miles away over in Hillsborough County on a course over there. Like 8 months later, and I got the disc back. Somebody called me, I drove over and got it. And so I've had it in my bag ever since. And the thing about this is it's actually beat. This actually wants to fly understable as well. It's because it's been hit into so many trees over the time, and I think that whoever had this disc, when I lost it, really played with it a lot and turned it into an understable disc, but I love it. Not as flippy as the Cobra. This is probably just a subtle turnover shot out to about 280, 290 feet. One of my favorite discs. And even though most people tell you, well, I have a KC Pro Rock, it's overstable, mine's beat in so much that it tends to be understable. I use this for approach shots too, if it's going to be a little bit of an anhyzer, to feel really comfortable with this disc. This is just a good old-fashioned DX Rock. Bought it new, and you'll find most of these discs, except for the DX stuff, I've bought used. I'm a big believer in buying discs used because sometimes plastic, star plastic, 18 bucks, 20 bucks, it gets a little rich for my taste. But this is just old-fashioned, run-of-the-mill, $8 DX Rock, 175 grams, love it. Doesn't want to turn over too much. I try not to put a lot of spin on it. Really accurate, feel really confident with it. I don't know how many people, it seems like players out there are either Cobra people or Rock people. I'm probably one of the rare intermediate guys, that's the division I play, intermediate, that you have both Rocks and Cobras in my bag. But like it, just put it on a line, it's gonna go. Any hole off the tee probably, 250 to 275. This is probably you're gonna see the disc. This disc is probably gonna be in my hand. Once again, depending uphill, downhill, but if that's the distance, average wind, and of course here in Florida the elevations never get too crazy. This is the disc I'm going to be using. And I use this for approach disc too on longer holes. Say it's a 600-foot hole. I throw the first, I drive 350 feet. From 250, this is what I'm using. Next, my Cobras, or my Leopards. And I got 5 of them. So, and I really believe in limiting the kinds of discs you have. Like I said, Innova, and I only have maybe 7 different models of discs in my bag. And I think that makes it easier to figure out, well, this disc does that, this disc does that. And so I'll start off, this is my favorite disc in my bag. And I know a friend of mine, who I won't mention, makes fun of me for throwing such light stuff. But this is a 150-gram Star Leopard. And I bought it used. And it is a little bit flippy. And you have to really watch when you throw it into the wind. But the nice thing about it is it wants to be flippy, but if you don't put a lot of spin on it and you put some hyzer on it, it won't automatically flip over into wind. Now granted, if it's 20, 25 mile per hour winds, then yeah. But if it's 10 mile per hour winds, something not really that powerful, it'll glide and it will keep going. You don't have to put a lot on this to keep it going. And being that I'm just an intermediate player, and don't have as much snap as probably I should have, as I should. This disc really works for me. This is my favorite disc in my bag. You see me throw this a lot, unless the wind is really up. And I can get this out, average, probably 340 feet, 350 feet. If I'm really feeling it, maybe 360, something like that. But like I said, it tends to be understable. It's a real good disc. If you have an elevation, you got to go uphill a long ways. Great disc for going uphill as well. Picked this up in the used bin at the Clearwater Disc Store a while ago, maybe a year ago, and it's been in my bag ever since. Love it. This is also 150 gram leopard, star leopard, but I bought it new because I wanted a backup for that one. But this one tends to be a little more overstable, as overstable as a 150 gram disc can be, I should say. And it doesn't want to flip over as much as that one does. And when it comes to throwing, once again, this disc isn't as popular as throwing as the red one is, but I still do throw it. Just depends, just a feel thing. You get out there, and should I throw the red one? Should I throw the green one? And sometimes the green one wins that battle, but it's not quite as understable as the red one. And once again, about the same distance with this one as well. 350 on a pretty good day. Next, I just got this disc, haven't thrown it much, but I can tell you right now it's going to be in my bag. This is a 167 gram star leopard that I just got at my last tournament up in Floral City, and I got it for just entering the tournament, and I picked it out of the bin from Sun King Discs. And I knew I needed something, because I'm going to show you a couple discs in a bit that are 175 grams. I wanted something in between. I had 150, had 175, wanted to get something in between. Found this. Right now, I can tell you this disc, for a leopard, it's a little overstable. It's going to need a little bit breaking in, but I think it's going to be a really good disc for me. But rarely do I get new discs, unless I get them in a tournament. You know, when you cash in a tournament, or just entering in the tournament, they give you like a coupon to get a disc. That's how I get new discs. Otherwise, I stay away from new discs. 175 gram leopard, pretty stable, almost a little overstable. However, I will admit, at my last tournament, toward the end, I really started torquing this thing over, and that was probably more my form than disc, and it started going Anheuser. So, and as I remind you, I don't throw any flicks, so it's good for me to be able to turn those discs over from right to left, but you don't want to turn them from right to left over if that's not what you're trying to do. But this disc is pretty true. I can tell you that downhill at Floral City this past weekend, I threw this disc over 400 feet. You know, whereas probably on flat ground, I can get this out to probably 360, something like that. But downhill, and not worrying too much about it flipping over, just have to watch it. This is one of my driving discs. Other guys are throwing wraiths, and although I do have wraiths, but for different occasions, and destroyers, and bosses, and katanas in intermediate, I'm stepping up with a leopard to throw. So I'm a little bit of a different player in that regard, but this is 175 gram star leopard. And then finally, the most overstable of my leopards is my 175 gram champion leopard. And for me, at least, what I've discovered is that the champion plastic seems to me to be the most overstable of all the plastic from DVEX up through champion. It seems like the star stuff tends to be a little more understable. It beats in a little quicker. And the champion, I don't have too much champion plastic. It's mostly star stuff. And also the reason is it does rain here in Florida. The grass is wet. And these are just a little harder to grab when it's wet. But I do have this in my bag. I like it, especially if I'm throwing into the wind. Once again, it depends on the feel. Depends on what's been going on with my technique and what kind of course it is. Next, I have a TL. This is kind of a get out of a mess type of disc. If I'm going to be throwing over water, for example, some of these discs I really like, and I don't want to have to go through the problems of breaking in another new disc. So if I have to throw over water, and I think maybe I'm not going to make it, or I'm going to hit a tree and it's going to go into the water, or I get caught in a tree and can't get it down, this TL is like my backup disc. 175 gram TL, fairly stable, into the wind. It may flip over a little bit, but nothing crazy. And so that's my get out of trouble disc, or throwing over trouble disc. TL, I have a backup for it too that's white, but generally I only carry this one in my bag. Next, my other favorite discs are T-Birds. Once again, old school, rocks, leopards, T-Birds, kind of a little bit of an old school bag. First, I have this 150 gram T-Bird in Champion, and it's an X out. It's a mistake. You can see there's a couple bubbles in the rim. That's probably why it was X'd out. Like it, a little gummier than you'd probably get in other Champion material for some reason. It's way gummier than that Champion Leopard I just showed you, but I don't mind that, like I said, for driving. I do mind it when I'm putting. A little overstable, once again, or understable. Why do I choose this in contrast to maybe one of my Leopards? Once again, it just comes down to the feel of what's going on at the time and how I'm throwing. Like I said, kind of a rare disc. Like it, just put it, I've had this disc for a while, just put it in my bag again recently. I used to practice with it, but now it's in my bag because I think I know what I want to do with it out in the course. You should never have a disc in your bag if you don't know what you're going to do with it. So I finally figured out how I can use this, and here it is. Next, another one of my most favorite discs, another light one, 153 gram Star T-Bird. Kind of a rare disc, a little bit rare. You find most of your T-Birds in Star 160 some grams and up, or you get the 150 gram, just period, 150 gram. Well, this is 153 gram. Throw this disc a lot off the tee. It's a 150 some gram disc, but it's not flippy because it's a T-Bird, so it gives me a lot of confidence that it's not going to flip over. So I can throw this into a moderate wind, whereas maybe I have to worry about the Leopards flipping over a little bit. With this, even though it's 153 grams, you don't have to worry about it as much because it's a little more overstable just because of the mold. And it kind of evens out between the weight and the plastic and the mold. It kind of evens out to be a pretty straight flying disc. That is, if its owner can throw it correctly. Really like this disc. Once again, got it used. And like I said, the TL I just showed you and the T-Bird, the Champion T-Bird, the 150 gram, got that used as well. Next, this is my tweener disc. It's 165 gram T-Bird. Really threw this well at Floral City this past weekend. Really like it. Once again, I'm throwing this into the wind, and if I want to make sure the disc is going to end up to the right, if there's water or some kind of OB to the left, I know that I can throw this, and it's still going to go pretty straight for most of the way, but I know it's not going to do this and go into the OB. It's going to go right, and I throw these just about as far as I throw my Leopards, 350, 360. And I got this disc used. You can see the scribble out on the back of it, who owned it previously. I bought it in the used bin. I do most of my purchasing at the Clearwater Disc Store, which is north of where I live. And like this disc, threw it a lot. Like I said, this past weekend, it's always in my bag, no matter what kind of course I'm playing. And I should say, my bag at least depends a little bit on how long the course is, what I'm trying to do. The kind of bag that I'm going to have at Cliff Stevens, for example, is going to be different than the bag I might have down at Lakeview in Sarasota, because that's a shorter course down there. It just depends. But pretty much this is my bag for your average course on an average day. And really like this disc, 165 gram Star used T-Bird. And then finally, one of the most overstable discs I have is a T-Bird that I bought new, and it's still pretty overstable, although I did somehow get it to go left a couple times this weekend when I didn't intend to. I think that was my form breaking down toward the end of the tournament. It's 175 gram T-Bird. Bought it new at the Clearwater Disc Store. One of the rare discs that I have in Star that I bought new because I wanted something that's overstable. And this disc, despite what I did this past weekend, is overstable. You throw it, and I can get it to go 325 now. Of course, into a stiff wind, it's going to fly further. It's going to flatten out and want to go. But 325, like I said, I'm not a big arm. I know the guys out there play through T-Birds like this, 450 feet. That's the way it goes. But overstable, good wind disc, and really these T-Birds and the Leopards, they just feel, for my hand size, I'd say for being 5'9", my hands are a little bit larger than average. These discs, those particular discs, the Leopards and the T-Birds, just feel so good in my hand, and I think that's why I tend to throw them better than a lot of other discs, especially discs with a wide plate on them, like a katana or something like that. I don't really particularly care for those discs, and that's why I don't carry them. But once again, my good wind disc, my 175 gram T-Bird. And then finally, another overstable disc, and it is a Champion Wraith. I use this on the extremes. On one hand, if I need to throw far into the wind, and the wind is pretty strong, say I'm on maybe number 10 at Cliff Stevens where I have to throw over the water, and usually when you're standing there on the tee, the wind is in your face, and you've got all that water and water left. This is the disc that I'm going to throw. I'm just going to try to throw in a line drive, and it's going to flatten out for a while and go pretty well. 175 grams. I did buy this disc new. I can remember when I got this, I couldn't get it to flatten out at all because it just didn't have the technique at the time. However, on the other hand, on the opposite extreme, because it's Champion, I use this for a lot of skip shots around trees. If I'm like maybe 150 feet out or something like that, and there's a bunch of trees between me and the basket, I'll set this out on a hyzer, and I'll just throw it right at the ground, depending on how far it needs to go. Just not aim in the air, right at the ground, and because it has such a sharp edge on it, it'll just skip. It's a great skipping disc, and that is just something as an intermediate player. I haven't been playing, by the way. I've only been playing for under 3 years. I started like in January. It really started taking seriously like January, beginning of 2011. This skipping shots is something that I've just gotten into probably within maybe the last 4 or 5 months, and this is the perfect disc to do that. And I don't use it a lot. In fact, I don't think I threw this disc off the tee once at Floral City this past weekend. Once again, just depends how I'm feeling, and I just like this disc, but you should have something, I think, in your bag where you can skip disc, especially if you're not a flicker. If you're just backhand like I am, you tend to need, I think a flicker guy who can backhand and flick, they could probably have overstable discs in their bag and just forget all about it. For those of us who only backhand, you have to have overstable and understable because you got to get those discs to go both ways. So that's my last disc. My Wraith. You'll notice that I don't have any big, although I do practice with some beasts, and I do have a katana and some other long-range discs. Not a fan of those for my skill level at this time. I have a Boss. I used to throw some Roadrunners, but they've gotten too flippy for me. I had some 150-gram Sidewinders that I practice with for my form, but they've gotten a little flippy even with the wind behind me. Even with I'm hyzering them, I'm trying to control them, just won't do it. Can't do it. So I tend to have discs. I mean, what is a T-Bird? Like a Speed 6 or Speed 7, something like that. And of course this Wraith, I think, is like a Speed 9 from Innova. I don't have a lot of long-range discs in my bag. I'm happy to be able to throw 350 feet to 370 feet with a T-Bird or a Leopard. And that's probably going to, if you could throw those accurately, that's usually going to keep you, I think, decently competitive. Really, my game is my short game. My putting I've really worked on, and I think I'm one of the better intermediate putters out there. I think so. I also have my towel, which was given to me by a good friend of mine who also plays disc golf, and we practice together sometimes. Got to have the towel. Got my water bottle. I got this. It says 2013 Fun and Sun Tournament. I got this in the gift bag that you get for entering the tournament. So it has stayed in my bag. It says Fun and Sun, April 27th, 28th, 2013, Cliff Stevens Park, city of Clearwater, Florida. That was actually the first tournament that I ever finished, in the money. We don't technically get money, but that was the first tournament I ever finished in the money. And this is my memento to remind me of this, and that's also what I carry my water in. I'm a fair-skinned guy, so I always carry my big bottle of sunscreen, and I'm the kind of guy that if I have it, I'm always willing to loan it out to people. Hey, you need sunscreen, you need sunscreen. And I do have a little bit of skin cancer that runs in my family, so I'm always lathering up out there. I have my sunglasses. I'm amazed how many guys play disc golf and they don't wear these glasses out when they're playing in the bright sun. I don't know how they do it. Maybe my eyes are just more sensitive to the light. But I almost think that I've gotten maybe a little bit of a trademark. It's kind of my thing now that I always have sunglasses on out there, whereas most guys playing do not. And I've only started to realize that recently, but I got to have my sunglasses so I can see. Although my vision's great, I don't wear contacts or regular glasses. I need my sunglasses. This is my marker, yellow, easy to see. I have a ton of these things. This one says the Clearwater Disc Golf Store, like I said, where I buy most of my stuff up there in Clearwater. I'm friends with Joe, actually. He's given me some lessons earlier this year. But here's my mini. Also, mosquitoes love me for whatever reason, and so I always got to carry the off, although the mosquitoes aren't now quite that bad here in October in Florida, but I'm telling you, like May through September, they tend to want to eat me a lot, so I always carry my off with me because you can't play if you're getting bit. You just can't. And I'm always willing to loan this out too to guys. Hey, you need some, you're going to get out there and you're going to get bit up and your score is going to suffer from it. What else do I have in my bag? I have a marker, just in case for some reason, I have a disc that I've just put in my bag that I forgot to put my name on. I got to carry a marker, and you never know, somebody else might need it too. I carry some sandpaper for my DX discs, like my Cobras, in case I hit into a tree and you get it and it has a mark on it. Maybe shave it down and get the rim of it back to smooth, because the more bit up they get, the more overstable they're going to be. So I do carry this, but just in case, but I don't think I've ever used it once during a round, but you never know. Although I have done some shaping of my disc with the sandpaper at home. And I carry some scorecards. I used to keep score when I was just playing by myself, but now after a while you just kind of know what's going on in your head. You can keep score and don't have to worry about it. But I keep a couple extra scorecards just in case. And then I also have a player's manual that I don't believe I've ever looked at once during a tournament yet, but you never know. I tend to play with guys who know the rules pretty well and haven't run into any cheaters. And then I carry some pencils too. And I don't know, maybe this is weird too, that when I play, I actually like to keep score. Most guys don't like doing that. And you know how when you play a tournament, you pass it around from one guy to the next. Every guy does so many holes, maybe 4 holes, 5 holes, whatever. I'll actually sometimes volunteer just to keep score the whole time. Keeps me in the game. I like to look at the scorecard to see where I am compared to the rest of the players. It keeps me from having to ask whoever is keeping score to see the scorecard. It keeps everything simple and really doesn't upset my game at all. It really doesn't. I think it keeps me more engaged and more mentally in tune. Not that I'm ADD, I'm not by any means, but it makes me feel more into the tournament when I'm actually keeping score. Once again, that's just me, and I'm Ed Dentzel, and that's what's in my bag.